Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be back here as alumni of SBS, so thank you for the opportunity to be here. As it says, I am a certified professional ergonomist and human factors specialist. Some of the hats that I wear, also a wife, I'm also a mom, I'm also a Vactral mom, if anyone's seen my shirt. Okay. So for most people, won't understand what Vactral means. It's an acronym. A V is for vertebra, A is for anus, C is for cardiac, R is for renal, T is for trachea, E is for esophageal, R is for renal, and L is for limb. It is a collection or association of congenital abnormalities. If you hit 3 of those, you are considered to have Vactral association. My daughter has 5. So that is one of the biggest hats that I wear in today's world. And I think why today is actually, it makes today very deeply personal for me. And I think the topic of inclusion really hit home last year when we were preparing to send her off to grade R, which is in this year, when we had to come to terms with one of her abnormalities or disabilities, and that is her incontinence, and how the school system was accepting her with her disability. And out of all of those things, in terms of Vactral, not one of them are visible. And like mentioned before, there's quite a few things on the smorgasbord of what my daughter is. So today I'd like to explore how we can treat inclusion not as a side project or a once-off initiative, but as a property of the whole organizational system. I'm going to try and connect insights from human factors, systems thinking, and organizational behavior to show how everyday choices in design, leadership, and routines either enable or disable participation. So why does inclusivity need a systems lens? We know diversity metrics have improved in many organizations, but lived experience often lags behind the numbers. People may be present but not fully able to participate or influence. At the same time, organizations are operating in increasingly volatile environments. Research on resilience and managing the unexpected suggests that those who handle disruption well are the ones who are better at learning from diverse perspectives and adapting quickly. So the core provocation today is, what if inclusion is not a program or a committee, but an emergent property of how we design work, decisions, and relationships in the system? If we accept that, then human factors and systems thinking become very practical tools for inclusion. In systems language, inclusion is a system of a property. It emerges from many small interactions between structures, tools, and norms. For example, the same diversity numbers can sit inside 2 different systems. In one, decision-making is opaque. Meetings are dominated by a few voices and feedback loops are slow. In another, roles are designed for shared decision-making, information is accessible, and people are invited into sense-making. A useful design question is, for this team, this project, this meeting, whose participation is reliably possible here? And whose is precarious or conditional? That shifts our attention from individual fixing to systemic design. Human factors engineering traditionally focuses on designing systems so that humans can perform well and stay well. When we apply this lens to inclusion, we start seeing how design decisions include or exclude those. For example, if decision processes rely on dense, jargon-heavy documents with short turnaround times, we are privileging certain cognitive profiles and disadvantaging others. If our IT systems are not acceptable to people with disabilities, we're embedding exclusion into infrastructure. Human factors encourages us to shift from retrofitting accommodations to individuals to building inclusive design features by default, adjustable work setups, accessible information flows, and processes that tolerate error and learning. Systems thinking helps us step back from single incidents, like one complaint or one workshop. and look at patterns over time. Often, exclusion is not the result of a deliberate decision, it's the accumulation of small design choices. Who gets invited to which meetings, how rosters are drawn, how performance is measured, and how long people have to wait for decisions. Resilient systems tend to be those that notice weak signals early and have mechanisms to adjust. Inclusion supports resilience because a wider range of perspectives and experiences is available to sense changes, interpret them, and co-create responses. So we did speak a little bit earlier about co-design, and this point I'm trying to emphasize here is how we can co-create these responses. From an organizational behavior perspective, culture is not what is written on the wall. It's what people have learned that they can expect when they take certain actions. An inclusive culture is one where people expect that they can express concerns, share ideas, or talk about their lived realities without being marginalized or punished. It's also one where fairness is not just promised, but experienced in performance conversations, promotions, workload allocation, and access to information. When we see inclusion as part of a culture, operating system, we start paying attention to the everyday micro-interactions that teach people whether they belong and whether their voice matters. One of the most powerful ways to operationalize inclusion is to shift from doing inclusion for people to doing it with them. Participatory approaches, whether in ergonomics projects, policy design, or process redesign, create spaces where workers' lived experiences directly shape them, or directly shape the system. This doesn't mean consensus on everything, but it does mean that voice is structured into decision-making and that people can see how their input has influenced outcomes. Over time, reliable channels for voice, decision, and feedback build trust. People are more willing to share early concerns, which supports both inclusion and resilience. And as you can see in the diagram that I've included there, you will see the different feedback loops of the participatory approach. And it's not a once-off thing that we do just to tick a box, but rather continuously improving, following almost a PDCA Deming cycle of this participatory approach within the work system. So what about leadership and leadership as a leverage point? Leadership matters not just because of positional power, but because leaders' routines become templates for others. When leaders consistently ask for diverse perspectives, are explicit about trade-offs, and respond constructively to challenge, they strengthen the signal that inclusion is safe and expected. And conversely, if they only listen to familiar voices, others quickly learn to self-censor. A systems thinking leader looks for leverage points, small changes in communication practices, recognition systems, or meeting formats that can have outsized cultural impact. When these patterns are sustained, inclusion stops being episodic and becomes a normal way of doing work. So let me ground this briefly in some case reflection from practice. There was an organization facing discomfort and performance issues who invited a diverse group of employees, including workers with disabilities and different language backgrounds, into a participatory ergonomics process. Instead of experts designing for them, we co-designed workstations, task flows, and communication methods. The tangible results were better ergonomic setups, improved comfort, and more stable performance. The less tangible but equally important result was a stronger sense of dignity and voice. People reported feeling that someone is finally listening. For me, this illustrates how human factors methods, when done participatively, become powerful tools for inclusion by design. To move beyond slogans, inclusion needs to show up in ordinary routines. Inclusive decisions reviews make diversity of perspective a standard checkpoint, not a special event. Voice-friendly meetings deliberately create space for quiet voices and people in less powerful roles. Design walkthroughs with diverse users ensure we don't discover exclusion only after implementation, which is more often the fact of the matter. None of these are complicated, but when they are consistent, they make inclusion observable and improvable. Teams can see and refine their own practices. To learn our way into more inclusive systems, we also need feedback. The goal isn't to reduce inclusion to a single metric, but to combine a few simple indicators. Who participates? How quickly issues are dealt with? Whether inclusive routines are actually used, and how different groups report their experience of safety and fairness. This lets teams experiment with small changes and see whether those changes are shifting both participation and experience. It also surfaces where inclusion is uneven across departments or demographic groups, which is often where the most important work lies. So what does this mean in practice? First, we reframe inclusion as a design challenge. How do we design work, decisions, and relationships so that participation is reliable to the widest range of people? Human factors gives us concrete methods for designing for diverse bodies and minds. Systems thinking helps us anticipate knock-on effects and find these leverage points. Second, we invest in structures for participation and in everyday routines that carry inclusion. And third, we support leaders in making inclusion visible through their own habits, not just through policies. So to close, inclusive organizational cultures are not achieved through symbolic gestures or isolated projects. They emerge from the underlying design of the system, its structures, tools, and norms. Human factors in systems thinking and organizational behavior together give us both the language and the tools to see where exclusion is built in and to redesign towards more equitable participation. The most powerful challenges are often ordinary: how we run a meeting, how we make a decision, and how we follow up on concerns. If they are co-created with those most affected and repeated consistently, they can quietly transform the system. So I'd like to leave you with one question. What is one routine in your own context that you could redesign to make participation more reliable and inclusive? Thank you very much.
Thanks.